All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into a really strange mystery that's unfolding on the streets of Europe. It all starts with this eerie red glow, but trust me, it leads us to some of the biggest questions of our time.
Okay, so just take a look at this. In a place called Gladsaxe in Denmark, near Copenhagen, the streets have started to look like something straight out of a science fiction movie. But this isn't for a festival, and it's definitely not some kind of art installation, so what on earth is going on here?
And the answer, honestly, it sounds like a line from a poem. They're doing it to free prisoners of the light. I mean, it's a beautiful phrase, right? But what it actually means is a story about ecology, about survival, and about a hidden crisis that's happening right above our heads.
Yeah, this isn't about aesthetics. It is a full-on active ecological defense. You can think of that red light as a kind of shield, one that's designed to protect some of the night's most vulnerable inhabitants.
So here's the specific problem that city officials in Gladsaxe were facing. They have these local bat colonies, and bats, as you know, need darkness to navigate and hunt. But our modern, super bright white LED streetlights, to a bat, they create what biologists literally call a light barrier. It's like an invisible wall that they just will not cross. This essentially shrinks their entire world, trapping them and cutting them off from their food sources.
But the solution they found is, honestly, brilliant. It's a biological loophole. It turns out that many nocturnal species, these bats included, are pretty much blind to long-wavelength red light. In fact, some Dutch research showed that bats are just as active in red light as they are in total darkness. So for them, a street lit in red feels just like a safe, dark corridor.
To really understand why this works, we've got to zoom out and look at the fundamental biology of light, specifically how its color shapes the world for every living creature. And that includes us.
At the very heart of all this is our circadian rhythm. You can think of it like a master clock, ticking away inside every single cell in your body. It manages everything from when you feel sleepy to when you get hungry. And the main cue, the master switch for that clock, is light. And this chart really shows why the color of that light matters so much. Those traditional white LEDs are just packed with blue light, which is highly disruptive. It messes with wildlife, it suppresses our own body's production of melatonin, that's the sleep hormone, and it scatters in the atmosphere to create that city sky glow we all know. Red light, on the other hand, it has a minimal impact pretty much across the board. Now, the impact of all this disruptive light is just staggering. Get this number in your head for a second. Today, a full 80% of humanity, that's 8 out of every 10 people on Earth, can no longer see the Milky Way from their home. We are literally the first generations in all of human history to lose the stars.
Of course, this didn't happen overnight. Our modern, perpetually lit world is really the result of a 400-year-long war on darkness, an accelerating campaign to totally conquer the night.
You know, this whole conquest started pretty humbly, with things like Ben Franklin's improved oil lamps. Soon after that, industrial gas lights let cities stay open later. Then in the 1880s, bam, electric arc lamps arrived. These were blinding towers of light that could illuminate entire city blocks. And that leads right up to our own era, where we've seen this huge global switch to those efficient but intensely blue-rich LED lights. And what's fascinating is that people were anxious about this even way back then. When those first electric arc lamps appeared, the author Robert Louis Stevenson, he didn't see progress. He saw, and I quote, "a lamp for a nightmare," complaining about its ugly, blinding glare. But this story goes even deeper than just technology and ecology. The sources for this explainer argue that light has also always been about power, and about how light and darkness have been used throughout history as tools for social and political control. The source material we're digging into here actually introduces a very powerful term for this: environmental apartheid. It defines it as a system where control over the environment itself, who gets light, who's forced into darkness, who gets clean water, is used as a tool of oppression. And this is where the source draws a really stark contrast. So on one side, you've got these European projects, like Denmark's red lights using light technology for conservation. But the source argues that in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories, light and darkness are actually weaponized. It points to high-intensity lights on settlements used for surveillance, and contrasts that with what it describes as imposed blackouts and infrastructure neglect in Palestinian areas, particularly Gaza, as tools of control. And there's another whole layer to this. The scholar Shoshana Zuboff coined this term surveillance capitalism.
It's basically an economic system where you're not the customer, your private experience is the product. It's all about taking what you do, turning it into data, and then using that data to predict and influence your behavior.
And this is where the simple streetlight gets a pretty frightening upgrade. In the age of surveillance capitalism, a streetlight is no longer just for visibility. Nope, it becomes a platform, packed with sensors, cameras, microphones. The public square, which was once just a space for community, becomes a site for total behavioral monitoring. The whole idea of an unobserved public life just starts to evaporate.
So we've gone from bats in Denmark all the way to the frontiers of digital surveillance. And it all brings us back to today and to a really fundamental choice that we all have to face about the kind of world we want to live in.
The debate over red streetlights really captures this conflict perfectly. On one side, you have these powerful arguments for ecology and human health. On the other, you have these really deep-seated fears that darkness increases crime, plus some practical concerns that red light could conflict with road safety standards because it makes it harder to perceive color.
But in the middle of all this complexity, here's the most important takeaway, and it's actually incredibly hopeful. Light pollution is the most reversible form of pollution on Earth. Unlike chemical spills or plastic waste, this is one we can fix, and we can fix it fast.
Because the solution is immediate. The second we decide to turn off an unnecessary light or shield the ones we need so they only point down, the darkness and the stars, they come right back. It's really that simple.
And this shows us that reclaiming the night is about so much more than just stargazing. It's about protecting the intricate web of life. It's about defending our own health. It's about pushing back against a world of constant surveillance. And it's about fighting for justice for communities who've had darkness imposed on them.
Which leaves us with one final question to think about. In our 400-year quest to conquer the night, to make everything visible and known, what essential parts of our world, and maybe even of ourselves, have we accidentally lost in the glare?